Hello, hello.
Hello,
Music's
hello.
over. All right.
Hello.
Welcome to Stump Simon, where you can ask anything from what is a stateless widget to how do I rewrite FFI from scratch.
Don't do that.
Yeah.
We'll be here all day.
Yes, it will.
To be honest, I did a little surprise thing the other day. I was speaking to someone else, and they were asking about page tables and how the operating system runs memory, and I was just describing all that just because why not?
Mm-hmm.
That was a nice conversation.
Awesome.
Anyway, all right.
Oh, man,
how's everyone doing?
Yay!
Glad to be back.
Yes,
glad to be back.
Where were you?
We missed you, Scott.
Yeah, I have had everything from travel to appointments. So, last show I had an appointment that I couldn't miss, and the show before that I was on my way to Detroit to speak at the Michigan Dev Fest.
Actually, before we get too far into it, I just thought we should do the do's and don'ts, and let's do that.
Oh yeah,
Let's
introduction.
Simon, take that away.
Too. Yeah, here we go. So do's and don'ts. All right. Be nice, respectful,
be nice, be decent. We have standards. Don't post anything that's adult, rude, offensive, etc., etc. Don't advertise or promote your service. Don't say, I need a job, please hire me. Don't keep posting your same question again and again. We do have a system where we put a check next to it and it goes into a list. If your question is posted a second time, we'll check it again. It'll go to the bottom of the list. So if you want to keep moving your question to the bottom of the list and never get to it, keep asking it. It'll happen. And then harassment of any kind, of course, is not tolerated. Incels, misogyny, bigotry, etc., etc. We share ban lists. So if you do something stupid and get kicked out of here, you may find that all of your logins to the various things in Flutter community suddenly don't work, like the Slacks and a few other interesting places. And we do notify the folks over at Discord.
And we've lost 0.6 off this picture, but that is, and don't forget to have a good time. So, let's do
good time. What's that?
So, just to quickly clarify who we are and why we're here. So, my name's Sam, community leader, Dev Angels London CTO, and you can follow me on Twitter at Dev Angels London. Scott.
I am Scott Stoll, community leader, organizer, GDG Cleveland, at Scott Stoll 2017, also on Mastodon under @Scott at fluttercommunity.social.
We should add our Mastodons, yeah.
I sit under the stairs at Dev Angels London and share a desk with Dobby.
Cool.
And
I'm Randall Schwartz.
I do speak live in front of audiences and make a fool of myself there as well as on camera.
Cool. And I'm Randall Schwartz. I'm a Google developer expert. I'm also the question magician for this show. I'm the one watching the questions for the live chat. We have a live chat with a lot of people there right now, but you could use more. So please join the show. Don't just watch this, week later. Let's get here live and ask questions and put Q: in front of them so that I know it's a question for us, not just a discussion amongst yourselves. So, which does happen from time to time. Pretty rare, though.
Who's that?
Oh, yeah.
You got your mic muted,
Sally.
Hi. So, since I'm in the other side of the world now, I'm still fighting with the jet lag. So my brain might be in the lower capacity.
Wait, which side of the world is the other side? I'm not sure which one you were at last.
Yeah, right now I'm at Vegas for reInvent for the AWS conference.
Oh,
cool. I
Nice.
will be here for the week. And we are meeting the service people as well as front end, web, and mobile communities. I met many Flutter folks actually from Europe in the last 2 days, so that was really great. So overall, what I do really quick is that I'm a developer advocate at the AWS Amplify team, and I have been doing mobile apps and Flutter apps for a long time, and now I'm just trying to teach those things with AWS Amplify. to the people. That's my day-to-day job.
I think I'd say feels from the community and from what I've seen that, you know, Amazon's play on Flutter has been coming leaps and bounds. So I think that's down to your influence, Silly. So, you know. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Honestly, they are doing a great job. So since I'm here, I would like to share something that last week we made a big release. Actually, I will share the link as well, if I may.
Yeah,
and right now we are doing a rewrite of the libraries that we have. And let me just quickly find the announcement link. So right now the team is working on a rewrite of the libraries. Before it was working only on iOS and Android, but the team had done a pure Dart implementation of these libraries. And at August, we have announced the developer preview for authentication to work on like not only mobile, but also web and desktop. And last week, actually like the week before Friday, we announced the new libraries for supporting web and desktop as well. So we are right now supporting API calls. So you can have a GraphQL or REST API. We are supporting storage, so file uploads and everything. They work really fine with all the platforms. And also we have the analytics going on as well. So right now, if you want to have an application that is doing like API calls and many more stuff, you can actually do it. I'm showing a simple example over there, so you can check it out, like try it out. Tell me what you think about it. Let us know about the problems, because still this is a developer preview. There might be some problems or like questions. Just let us know, because the team is like a really responsive team. Like they're honestly like one of the smartest people that I work with. So like whatever you have in mind, we will try to address it. So yeah, these are some announcements on our end.
Very cool.
Thank you.
I've got a couple things myself. First of all, Matt, I actually have a pretty good time in Detroit. I know a bunch of people up there. They know all the right places to go. It's actually a fun town if you know where to go. It's kind of like when I lived in Philadelphia. And Mike, I really appreciate the critique there. For some of the older folks in the crew, a flex is a flex is a flex, of course, unless it's Mr. Ed. If you happen to know that one. But yeah, I had a fun time with that talk and am already in the middle of putting together a PR for the docs. So
let's jump straight to the questions, I think, because they're stacking up already. So I think we'll get to
That's right.
Yeah,
it's a good thing.
Oh, and by the way, quick thing. When Randall's telling you how many questions there are, we have a semi-rule. The number of minutes in the stream divided by 2 is how many questions we can have in the queue before we cut it off. So we got 45 minutes. That means we can have 22 questions, and we're up to 19 already. So
I think I think we're going to. We were saying actually. Sorry, before Scott, you got on. We could actually run over a little bit for me and Randall here. So if you need to head off,
plowing all the way through.
We're gonna go for it.
My boss might complain if I don't get that PR in soon.
Yeah, that's
right.
fine.
Go on, let's get to the questions.
Scott.
So,
yes, questions.
All right.
What? Who wants to read this one? Should I read it? You using Dart as a server?
Dart as a server.
Go on.
How can one achieve load balancing? By creating isolates or creating another Dart server that serves as a load balancer, either via proxy. Oh,
it's interesting. I mean, the thing here, right? I mean, all right. So first thing I'd say, right? Let's get the microphone over. There we go.
Well, here's an interesting thing, though. The load balancing is separate from the server itself, isn't it? Well, you could have a server of any kind in GCP.
Well, what's it called?
I just want to say something. When Scott said AWS, he felt 1 second, he looked at my eyes and he was like, oh, AWS person here. So I need to say it.
No, we better include AWS.
Busted.
Yeah. No, I was going to say that you obviously, so if you're hosting this yourself, like the load balancers you get on cloud services do probably a best involved in this job, right? Because it means that you can use the container, normally the container model of services that the provider, AWS, GCP, whatever, offer, and it will scale it up and it will do all that lovely fun stuff. In fact, Cloud Run, which I have experience with, actually just offers a nice model of, based on like number of connections or resource utilization, it will just scale and just create more servers, and then they will also be load balanced correctly, and it'll just all handle it all for you like magic, right? There's obviously, you can set up compute instance groups, and you can have a load balancer on GCP and all that kind of fun stuff. You configure it yourself. This is kind of interesting because, like, they sort of talk about like by creating isolates or by creating another Dart server that serves as a load balancer, either by proxy. So this feels to me that you're not trying to use a cloud provider. You're trying to run it yourself. And if you're trying to do it yourself, you can. For the life of me, I can't remember the name.
Pay the money. Just pay the money.
The front end. There's a common open source caching framework that's put in front of web servers, and I can't for the life of me remember it. Anyway, that would be the software I'd go to first, because you can just put that in front of your of any sort of CGI gateway, and you can actually have your Dart server act as a CGI backend, so it will spin up instances of your Dart server to handle the load. That's an open source sort of way of doing it. Creating multiple isolates is perfectly viable way of doing this, and you get a good amount of resource sharing as well now with the groups, with isolate groups. If you use spawn URI and spawn exit, isolate exit and spawn URI, then you'll actually get an isolate group and reuse, and you can spin them up very quickly. So you can do that per request even, right? But I'm not sure if that really solves load balancing, right? Because you're essentially just putting more requests through on one server at any one time, right? That's just what isolate's going to give you, multiple, essentially concurrency of request handling. What it doesn't do is give you load balancing over multiple servers. And when you get into that thing, normally you have external cloud software, but there is one avenue you can go down. That is, you can spin up multiple containers, limit their resources. You can spin up multiple servers, actually run API calls to some cloud provider and spin up more compute engine instances to handle it. But I mean, I feel like you're reinventing the wheel. If you're gonna be hosted on a cloud provider, use the cloud provider resources, and if you even better, if you're doing this as a first time service, then just go with the pre-made solution, because you get to market quicker. You're not wasting your time in re-implementing something that's already there. Once it gets the traffic, and once you feel that you want to reduce your costs, maybe it makes sense then to not use the cloud provider because they're slightly more expensive than doing it yourself, and you do it yourself, right? And you don't have as much flexibility, but you reduce the costs. This can all be like ongoing work on your product, right? But definitely not at the beginning, I don't think. Anyway, I was just sorry. Do you have anything to add, Salih?
Yeah, I mean, actually, you covered everything for the that is the server side. The other solutions are basically going full serverless and using other technologies and create it independently, right?
Off the top of my head, you got Lambda is the cloud function. Is there a Cloud Run alternative on AWS? Is there a name for that? I
mean, Cloud Run alternative is I would say Lambdas. Lambdas should do the same thing.
See, Lambda's a cloud similar to Cloud Functions, right? But Cloud Run kind of sits
I think
between...
App Runner, I guess. There's something called App Runner, and that might be the one that you're looking for. Then, App Runner is exactly like you said, in between one. It is quite specific to the use case that you might have. So overall, when you create a Dart server or something, whatever solution that you want to have, I think Lambda should do your trick. But for example, Dartfrog has a tutorial about App Runner, so they can check the documentation as well.
Thanks. All right, next question. DT.
Yeah.
DT Delhi asks,
But
How
I
can
want to
pass
say it took that
functions?
long on the first question.
Yeah, I know.
At this rate, we're gonna be-
And they're delaying my ability to read the second one as we speak.
Go on,
Sorry.
Scott.
Go.
Wah. How can we pass functions to an isolate and return the value from that isolate to the main UI thread? I have send ports so we can only send objects. Compute is spawning multiple isolates. Only need one.
Okay. I can
That's
tell
a
you
bunch
the problem
of
they
different
have.
topics there.
This is one problem, and it's the problem that you have when dealing with isolates. You have to use ports to send data back and forth, which is like a messaging queue, right? And what's really interesting is you have to get your head around the fact that a send port has a paired receive port, right? So when you create a send port, you can call send port dot receive port, or as you create a receive port, you get send port. This is the problem, right? It's one of these raids around. I should literally have to type this into the documentation to remember which we're running the send port. But basically, send port dot. No, it's a receive port. You create a receive port and you get send port. There you go. See, I got it the wrong way around. Right. So let me just check that, make sure I'm not putting people in the wrong direction here. Send port property on receive port. Yeah. So you create a receive port and it gives you a send port for that receive port. Okay. You listen to this, right? This is the magic that you have to do. You create a receive port in your master isolate, your main isolate, right? And then you take its send port and you send it over the channel to your function. Your functions first get from the channel, retrieves that send port and stores it, and then it uses that to communicate data back again. So you get two-way communication, right? So there's like a dance that you can do to essentially communicate ports back and forth and to like communicate. There is the interesting actually is the compute function that exists in Flutter does this, and it's probably a good example of it. So I would probably go. It's I don't know. There might be some. I think there might actually be some examples in the isolate package or the async package. Yeah, it's annoying, but that's it. I mean, you can send objects back and forth then. But you'll need to manage, if you're going to do multiple isolates, you can spawn multiple isolates, but then you need to have a separate receive port for each one. And then you have to like listen on them all and manage that whole thing.
And there are pooling packages in the pub to be able to manage multiple isolates and deal work out to those. There are plenty of those in the pub.
I feel like the last time I looked at this, it was the isolate package. So like you have Dart, like you have I bring it up on stream actually.
It was like worker pool or something.
Well, like you have isolate worker. I swear.
Worker manager, the manager one I think did that. You scroll past it.
So you have Dart isolate, right? Which is the inbuilt library, which has the basic implementation. I swear there was a package called isolate. Hang on. No, that's not what I want. Hang on. I'm just going to easy isolate. I have no idea what this is. I just want to do ice. Deprecate 17 months ago. Discontinued. All right. Well, yeah, here, isolate runner. Was this merged somewhere else? I have no idea. This was what I used to use for this, which actually had this notion of a load balancer and runner and all this other fun stuff. I guess it's gone away the dinosaur. Yeah. All right. Well, I'm sure though that the code is still, at least up to date enough for you to like look at. But I'm sure there's plenty of packages here. So yeah. Anyway, let's move on. I don't think anything more to add to that.
Yep.
Paco says, what are the effects of the Android 13 notification permission change to Flutter apps? Any easy integration when building Flutter apps against Android API 33? I'm going to say I have no idea because I've not looked at that. Which is kind of interesting. I didn't even know there was a...
So
we all have no ideas.
Meanwhile, I can jump in. Meanwhile, you guys take a look.
I'm
so basically, the notification permissions now looks like the iOS ones. So before you receive a notification, now you receive a permission by the operating system. Like the users needs to give specific permission. So overall, how would affect is I don't think that it's going to affect that much, because any libraries that is using notifications, they just need to add the permissions to their libraries, right? Like, and once it is there, again, like it will be same as using the iOS ones. You will just ask, and if it doesn't receive it, you will be a good citizen. Let them know that they will not receive information, and if your app heavily relies on it, you just need to block it. This is how it is.
Well, interesting enough you say that, because the go-to package is Flutter local notifications.
Yeah.
And that's been updated 9 days ago here. So it's actively being developed. It looks like they're probably gonna have changes. They already have support for doing it for iOS and asking for that permission.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's the reason why they wouldn't just extend that to support Android. But if you're interested, maybe look up the package. I'll pop it in the chat here for everyone, the link to what I'm talking about, the package, and perhaps you can go look at Flutter local notifications and see if there's a PR. If there's no PR, do a PR, help everyone out. That'd be awesome.
Cool.
This is an open source project again,
Yeah. What does a 3D experiment on Impeller mean for the future of Flutter?
Yay!
If it's successful. No.
Yeah, if it works.
I mean, the ability to do 3D in Flutter would be a total game changer. It really would. Depending on how fast it runs, you could start looking at games in a much more serious way. Especially considering now that we're able to release on desktop.
Yeah.
More than just phone games.
I think it's kind of interesting. I'm not sure, like, I think people forget that right now Flutter apps are 3D, same as 3D apps, right? In the sense that they are done on the GPU, they have a Z order, they just don't have depth. They don't use a perspective camera, right? So in a sense that, it doesn't improve anything directly from a performance perspective, but what it does mean is that we align closer to being that of a game engine. In that, one of the things that we've seen recently is shaders, right? In using Flutter, and that idea of being able to really manipulate the resulting look of the app, right? Like, I've seen so many cool effects on some of the other platforms, like pixelation effects and really cool like interaction effects with your application that drive almost application more to the direction of games and the way that game UI works for like menus inside games and things like that. And I think that's where I'd see that we could start going then, right? If we have the ability to make shaders and to do all this very advanced graphic stuff, which is what I really like about Flutter anyway, if we can start doing that and really pushing that forward, then we can really start seeing some really nice user experiences that are driven more from that GPU environment rather than the CPU bound widgets. Old school.
Another interesting thought on that is, how could you use the look of a 3D game and turn it into a UI? What kind of now that's along more brand first. Okay, that's a brand first UI all the way. So it's not Cupertino and it's not Material, but it's how trippy can you get just for fun? That would be an interesting hackathon contest.
Well,
I just remember my experiences when Second Life was starting to promote having vendors have real life entities in there, virtual entities in there, and how it's just done horribly, because I don't think anybody in advertising understands really what virtual reality could be. That's why the whole meta thing was just really strange too, selling virtual real estate. It does not make any sense because people don't know how to use it yet. And it's a really ugly, awkward interface that has to have enough horsepower on my side to even get the message.
Well, and speaking of Second Life, history lesson. Second Life originally started as something called Alpha World back in 97, 96. And to give you an idea, I know it's the exact same thing because when you go to the central fountain, it's still playing Champagne Supernova. And I think they started that in 96. It's just been on loop ever since.
I found what I was looking for. This is what I want to just show
Cluster.
everyone. Huh? Yeah. Anyway,
Cluster. Love it.
Right. Let me just see if this will come up on the stream here. Hang on. So this I'll make. So did that come up full screen?
Yeah, it was big enough.
There you go. So you kind of got these kind of like sort of almost usual effects, right? But look, you get the curl, you get that kind of thing that you can start doing with 3D, right?
Yeah, exactly.
This kind of like nicer, just nicer UIs, but there's actually this follows up with this. This is really cool.
Ooh.
Nice. Oh yeah. That's the kind of thing I'm talking about. Being able to do that with actual 3D.
And this kind of like, doing this nice shader effects and really making your UI, it's still an app, but it's truly a three-dimensional app, right? In terms of the feel and the look of it. This is the kind of stuff that we can start seeing with it. I feel that if we get those abilities from Impeller, right? Anyway, moving on. Hope that answers your question. I'll post a link
where
to
are
that
we
if
at
people
here?
are interested.
Next.
Is there a good and flexible way to use YouTube player package for Flutter? I have not done anything with YouTube. I have done too much with Vimeo. I wish I had done less.
Video in general is always a problem. Is there? But I don't know if there's an official YouTube package. Is there?
Not an official
I think there are
one,
a couple.
but there is. But the thing is, honestly, YouTube packages are the worst ones. To be honest, I don't know.
These are like
YouTube downloader packages are worse.
Yeah.
We call them virus.
Call them
to
what?
be honest, virus.
Yeah.
Right. I would say like just launch the URI. Just launch use URL launcher. Just open up the YouTube URI. Let the device start the YouTube player in the YouTube app, and when they go back, it returns back to the app. Like just do that. Then they get all. You don't have to make a player. You don't have to do it full screen. You don't have to do it any of the stuff. You're not making a video
pointer
player.
interceptor.
Yeah.
There's just so many other problems you're going to get from just doing video. Trust me, I know from many years of experience dealing with this. Yeah, just launch the YouTube URI and move on. If obviously if your whole thing is around playing the media, then probably you want to be using a different service than YouTube, right? Like YouTube's not designed to host media. It's not. It's an end user playback system, right? So.
And if you are determined and you avoid Simon's advice, then remember when you make your own custom controls and try to click on them, and all it does is pause and unpause the video.
Oh, did he get paused or was he just joking?
I mean, I thought he did a great job. Then we saw him pixelated, so.
So you literally paused in the middle of what you were saying there, and it looked like a joke. Yes.
Me? Oh God.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I'm watching all of you start to
point.
pause now.
We got the point.
Pointer. If you're determined to do it and you're clicking on your controls and all it's doing is stopping and starting the video, then you're going to need a package called Pointer Interceptor. So that one's Flutter team or Google? think it was Flutter team.
So yeah, I mean, like at the end of the day, the pointer interceptor was done by the Google team, and it's particularly about web, right? That's the key, right?
Sorry.
That's right. Yeah, I was going to say you start it, but anyway, the one at the top of the queue.
Moving on.
How do you keep yourself updated? Do you follow tech bloggers? Explain your approach a bit, please. What do you mean keep ourselves updated? It's impossible. You just scramble as fast as you can, and you take whatever crazy drugs Simon's doctor gave him that give him an infallible memory, so you can remember all this stuff.
I think that a lot of the time as a developer, and it's definitely something at the beginning, right? As a developer in the beginning of your career, you don't realize this is part of your career, right? Your part of your career is following, understanding the latest movements, understanding the latest software trends. So much of this is like, we talk about Flutter. Like, I came to Flutter 4 years ago. I wasn't born into development with Flutter, right? You may be coming to Flutter as this is your first development experience, right?
Right.
In which case, there's so many other things you can learn, and part of being a developer and part of being in the world of software is keeping yourself up to date, because it's constantly changing. The approach is constantly changing. Technology is constantly changing. Packages, frameworks are constantly being changed. You're making this software as you're building it now for maybe for other people. Yeah. And then during your building of that software, you're making new tools. Those tools for other developers. It just keeps going and going and going. It's a cycle. So yeah, I think I must I try to spend at least 20% of my time keeping up to date.
Yeah, me too.
Recently, it can go up to 30%, but recently it's been more like 10%. So, like.
Yeah, I need to put in more time doing that. I'd say mine's been about 5%, but that's because I've got a gazillion other things going on with community and et cetera, et cetera.
One of the things I like to do is as I'm reading stuff and I'm seeing something new and interesting, I often want to do a screencast about it because I have a Flutter YouTube channel. And so I have a way of recording that immediately. And then I go back and now I've got 160 items that I want to study and make videos about. And I haven't had time to do that. But at least I'm looking at other cool packages and other cool stuff all the time. And it never stops. It's never stopped educating.
Yep. Hey, Simon, can you bring up the UI again while we're talking here? Somebody was 9 minutes delayed. Wow. I think they're back now, though. And Sully, do you have any tips, tricks for staying updated?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it would be really the straightforward part. Obviously, the first place that I go to is Reddit. Reddit is quite vibrant. If you want to keep up to date, you will see the latest news from everyone within the open source maintainers to, I don't know, content creators. Even when we do a release, we put it to the Flutter Dev Reddit. I would say Twitter was one of the places that I was investing a lot, and LinkedIn as well. So I would take a look into these and follow it along as well, because I think it's really important to understand the fact that, first of all, you can't be a FOMO-driven developer. You will not be able to know everything. You will not be able to catch up with everything. What I would recommend is just try to catch up with the things that you can. The rest of the things, it's just up to you. What you need to do is, first, you need to know what you need to know for your day-to-day job. Secondly, you just need to follow along what people are doing and how do they do it, and how you can actually integrate these information to your projects, to your whatever you have. So overall, if you combine everything together, I think you can stay up to date, I would say.
And I would add to that, get really good at Googling things, figuring out how to get proper keyword sequences and stuff to get that stuff out, because Google has indexed everything of use and indexes new stuff immediately in some way. I don't know how they do that, but it's really
so good. So they index everything that's of use, and then they also index the new stuff. Got it.
Yep. Sometimes it's not useful. Right.
Also, That's useful. Very useful.
Yeah.
There were over 1,000 articles a year ago. We've lost track.
Yeah.
So actually there were over 1,200 in April.
Oh, I like what Matt just said there. Matthew just said. And okay, there we go. Yeah. Watch us. Watch us. We try.
Watch us online. Yes. Scott, can you check the background chat? Anyway, let's move on to the next question here.
Sure.
Edward, you have any of you did a project where you had to scrape through YouTube video descriptions and its comments? How was the experience? Any gotchas we should be aware of? No, no, I haven't. But
No,
I think actually, no, I'd say a lie. I have looked at that. I mean, you have the YouTube API, right? I think if you're scraping, first of all, if you're scraping the website, that's the worst way to do it, right? I mean, the websites change. You're liable to have breaking things. You can do it. There is actually XPath. I'm going to probably get nodding here from Randall. XPath has been around a while. And I know there's a package in, let me just point in the right direction of this. If you are going to do scraping, you probably want, I'm just going to say this. It's not, right. I think there's a slightly modified XPath pass.
There's something that sits on top of the XML parser one. I think that's
so basically, I think this is the one. So basically, you give it your HTML that you download off the site, and then you can give it a special path attribute, which is basically an expression about what you want to extract. It might be XPath selected. There's a bunch of these, right? Anyway, I'm sure you can go find a few that are in packages. They're in. I swear I was using one the other day. Anyway, there's a ton of them, but the name for it is called XPath, and that lets you at least describe the data you're trying to extract in sequences of these expressions. So it means you don't have to go through a lot of code changes to just extract data from an XML tree / HTML tree. But yeah, to be honest, I would just go use the YouTube API with their expected limits and do all the usual stuff. I mean,
And the problem with web scraping is it's fragile. And if they change anything about the layout, your expression probably won't be correct anymore.
It
might accidentally be. It might accidentally be.
What's even worse now, Randall, is we talk about this from a perspective of back in my day, because it was just HTML. Now a lot of websites are dynamic HTML, aka they are JavaScript that generates the HTML nodes and the DOM tree.
Yeah.
And that that means you have to now have to run a JavaScript V8 engine, run the JavaScript in a fake and have a DOM tree and all this. It's just nuts.
Yep.
It's just not worth the hassle. Use an API. In fact, the website probably used the API to fetch the comments to display on the website. So,
Sure.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right.
Okay. Next.
How much is too many objects to have at the same time? Let's say you have a list of 1,000 products. Is it bad to fetch the whole list with all properties and parse for each screen what you need? Well, first question, for before you say that, Sully, if you're going to go get all the properties, is this just one JSON file that's a string? Because, I mean, War and Peace goes in, 750K? If it's just text. Now, I wouldn't want to go downloading all the images. That's for sure. Other thoughts?
I mean, I will give a simple example. The other guys can jump in with the detailed one. Never pull in all the data with one single process. Never pull in your sub properties or sub models all together. Simply never. This is what I was saying. First thing that you need to, you tell me then.
No. I was just going to say that there's an interesting caveat to this, right? And there's been a back and forth about this in the mobile development sphere for years and years. And that is, you want to get as much data as you can immediately upfront in the shortest time possible. right? Because it keeps your cell signal on for a short period of time. It conserves the battery. There's other reasons why getting all your data up front is good. But here's the difference. If you now fetch all this data up front, if you have to parse all that data to get to what you want, you've just wasted all of the effort you put into getting all that data up front, because now the CPU has to be kept more busy and it's more processor intensive. And then again, it's even worse because if you now have to do that on every screen or every refresh of a screen, that's way worse. You know, you're now doing not just once, but now doing it 60 times a second or however many times for 1,000 products.
So it sounds like fetch the text, but parse as needed.
Yeah, so there's actually a thing called, there's actually, it's kind of annoying. I don't think, do you know, I'm not sure, and don't hold me to this. So the normal JSON parser that's inside Dart is not a stream-based parser, right? Like it doesn't stream and spit out the objects as it goes in the events. Like you don't get that kind of like approach. So you can't just say stop at 20, right? So let's say you get an array and say, I want to read 20 items from this array and then stop, right? You can't do that. Like it just, you have to give it an entire, you have to get an entire list back, right, of maps, right? It just doesn't work that way. There might be a JSON stream parser, but either way, the point here is what Sally said, right? Like you don't want to process, you don't want to do all this work for no reason, right? So I don't know, like for me, go on.
Sorry, I've seen the message from the question asker. They said also you make more requests to server. So if your concern is make more requests to server, then that's not how it is. The thing is, that is why we, again, like I would recommend checking out the topics like simply pagination, for example. Pagination is a topic that is like quite common in applications. I understand sometimes there are apps that you are planning to do offline work and you need to pull in all this data at once, but if you have 1,000 objects and if you're parsing these 1,000 objects, then you will have sometimes that, okay, now it is freezing. What should I do? Should I pull in another isolate? Okay, I have another isolate. Then you try to control something that is out of your reach per se. And everything, when you neglect to do the practices that is created to solve this problem, you would just, instead of doing this, you will be doing this, and it might work. You might be still holding the ear. I don't know.
I'm just rereading this question thinking that Andrea, sorry, I probably got your name wrong.
Andrea,
there's probably, the questioner.
Andrea Oreshkovich.
Let's say that you have a list of 1,000 products. It might be that your entire backend is just 1,000 products, right? In which case, you've got a finite set. You know, it's not like you've got 100,000 products or more. Maybe downloading that 1,000 products with their IDs into a database, like, and not as like a JSON file or anything like that, but just downloading them up front and storing them in a ISAR database or Hive or something like that, and then accessing them as required to put them on the screen. That's a really efficient way of doing that, right? Because you've got your single upfront cost with one request to the server and one batch download. And then for the lifetime of your app, or for whenever you need to refresh, you just go, have any more products come in since this product was last added, the last product. Then, you know, you're not, you know, making unnecessary requests, you're not making unnecessary network bandwidth. And also it can work offline. There's ways of accessing it. So the problem is, not understanding what you're trying to do with your project, it's very hard to say. But in generally, you don't want to just start downloading 1,000 products, let's say, for the screen that you're on, for only to see 10, right? And then doing that again for the next screen, or changing a category, you download another thing, right? Making HTTP requests for each screen of your app is just not what you want to be doing, right? Because it means for the entire session, that the entire user session of your application, let's say you're using your app for 20 minutes, their internet connection, the cell, let's say their Wi-Fi is on full power, their cell radio on the inside their phone is on full power for 20 minutes and just sucks the battery. This is bad application development, right? And it's one of the reasons why when you do analytics, and just to kind of explain this point, analytics libraries like Google Analytics or Firebase Analytics, when you edit your app, they batch up all of the analytics events and then send it all in one go, normally like the start of the next session, right? Now, this is so that, there's no unnecessary network bandwidth during your use of the app. Imagine if you were just tapping on things and recording the analytics events and they're going live out on the internet all the time. That's just super bad because the cell radio never switches off. It never goes onto a standby mode, and just this is how apps consume lots of battery. And also the phone CPU is kept doing other things, not just your app, but things in the background then. And again, you get a nice warm toasty phone in your hand. So also, it's about avoiding doing work when unneeded, right?
Also, the thing
if you live in a cold place, that could be a good thing. But
go on, sorry, silly, go on.
And no worries. Like this, I think what we need to keep in mind is that we are sometimes taking the fact that we have good internet connection with nice data plans granted. We think that everyone has the same as well, and everyone is paying like $5 and getting 10 gigabytes of internet. But the thing is, if you pull in this data unnecessarily, like Simon explained, if it's a one-time thing, maybe it will save the people in the long run. But for example, you can check the versions. If the version didn't change, you don't do nothing more. But if you try to just update everything all the time as a bunch, not even by doing the diffs, then you will be just costing data to the people, and your users will ask, what's going on? Why am I just reading, for example, the same set of data and everything is going down to drain?
It's one of the saddest things.
Well,
I see this all
sorry, a strange point on that. People would think the U.S. does not have this problem. People who move to the U.S. have sticker shock. Okay? Data plans in the U.S., there's no other way to say it. They're a complete ripoff compared to the rest of the world. The rest of the world actually pays a lot less for data. So please be kind to the Americans who are being overcharged for our data and listen to
Yes, you are unlucky as well.
Yeah, Scott, I think there's a bit of a delay on your connection, by the way, because anyway, it doesn't matter. Okay. And just to the point that Cindy made about the data bandwidth, like as we were saying, like downloading up front can be one measure of, there's one upfront cost then maybe for use of your app for a long period of time rather than downloading as you go. Like you have to, this is the nature of app development, right? This is you doing your job as an app developer, working out what is the best approach to your application for your end users. And that is really down to the specific use case of the application. So it's really hard to say like there's one way over another, if that kind of makes sense. That's better in and so on. Right, let's move on to the next question. Alex, are there plans to abandon ref being passed everywhere? So I know what he's talking about. This is
Riverpod.
Right?
Well, but that's a Riverpod. That's not Flutter.
Yeah.
For one, we just need to make that differentiation, but then we can get into it.
I love the way it says abandon being passed everywhere. You don't have to pass it everywhere.
No, you don't.
You pass it where you need it.
I mean, the point. No, I mean, it's not just that. I mean, like the point here is that you use consumer widget, you use the inbuilt stuff, so you're not passing it everywhere. It handles it for you. And again, that's the use case of going and saying I'm going to use Riverpod means that you're using the Riverpod way of state management, which is you use ref, right? Yep. So if you don't want to do that, or you find that that's not the one that fits your use case, or you find it's too busy for you, then use one of the other ones, right?
Right. There's plenty of ways to do it.
The person said like build methods and code smell, but the thing is, it depends on what you're building as well. If you're too careful about it, you just like need to use the correct set of widgets then as well. Like you do not need to, bring in everything that Riverpod provided it to you. And also you can check out the source code and see how it is handled in the library as well. If you have curiosity or questions, you can check it out, that you can see how it is handled, or how, if it is, for example, recreating something and maybe causing any issues. I know it doesn't. I tried it in many apps, but if you have fears, I would recommend, like, instead of dropping a reference that a library that is giving you as an option to make your life easier, I would just recommend checking out and adding your concerns and actually getting the answer to the concerns instead of dropping. Yeah.
And one thing it's important to understand about ref is it's a value in flight. So in other words, it's like context in that you don't want to save a context somewhere in your data. You only want to use the one that's being handed to this build method this time. Because if you start saving it, it's going to get everything all screwed up in the tree.
Yeah.
Same thing with a ref. Ref is actually a pointer to a provider element that's hanging out in the context tree, and that will change from time to time too. So you really don't want to be saving ref, and you don't want to be saving context anywhere in your code. These are in-flight variables.
Cool. All right.
All right. Facing issues regarding future provider in init state. What am I doing wrong?
Line 37.
No.
Line 37. That's wrong.
Actually,
Need a
but
semicolon there.
here's the thing:
Semicolon.
are you actually declaring a future provider in init state? And that could be.
No.
Yeah.
Oh,
So when you declare your providers with Riverpod, they're globals. They're not declared within a function. They're declared outside of classes, outside of functions. That's the global namespace. That's where you need to be declaring your providers always. If you're trying to override a provider, there is a mechanism for doing so, which I've forgotten what it's been renamed. Is it still overrides? Isn't it like
override with
values?
Override with provider? It's well, override with provider and override with value went out way. Now it's just override with.
Ah, that's it.
So
Yeah, I knew that
much
changed.
simpler. Yeah.
So yeah, I'd say that's what you're doing wrong. You're probably going in your local scope, and then it's not going to get updates. It's going to basically going to get a new instance of your provider each time your widget is created, which is not how provider's supposed to work, and it'll just blow up, which is probably what's happening.
Before we go to the next one, I would like to say thank you guys for having me this week. When I'm back, I will probably join one more time to, hijack a bit about to talk more about Amplify.
Oh yeah,
but it was really great to meet you all. Like it was really great. Now that right now we have a conference going on, we have the reInvent event, and I need to go to the venue. Share the Flutter Lab.
Well, when you're flying home, you're going to have a layover in Cleveland, right?
No, I will have a layover in Los Angeles.
Keep telling you, man.
Yeah,
Yeah, go on.
Tell me.
No, I was going to say, do we have you on doing an AWS talk, or did you do an AWS talk for the Flutter Dev Camp?
We have not. The thing is, anyway, we discussed it, but the program is already booked, so I was going to do it later on, so we can discuss it later on.
Yeah. All right.
Okay.
Cool.
Yeah, take care. Thank you very much, guys.
Okay,
bye-bye.
Okay.
Ciao. All right, then there was 3. Next question. Eli.
Cool.
Creating shader profiles
to avoid jank is a bit of a pain. You're talking about warming up the shaders in iOS. Yeah. That's been like...
No, it's still the thing to do. I mean, to be honest, it's the whole... There's actually a whole thing for that, isn't there? There's a
I thought we were like 4 steps beyond that.
No, it's...
still having to warm up the shaders?
What he's talking about is this shader compilation jank page on Flutter. I'll post it in the chat so everyone's aware of this. And basically you need to warm up the shaders so you get better, not as long first runs, and you do this. You run your app in Provolone with cache SL, and it generates some JSON files, and then those can then be bundled and shipped with your app, which is as shown here, basically. So the idea is that impeller means that you won't have to do this. So the answer is the plan for fixing this? Yes, impeller, it's already underway, and there's lots of talk about impeller, and you can go look online about impeller. But impeller is essentially a new rendering engine for Flutter Engine. to replace Skier. And
with 3D.
It's complicated.
3D.
It's complicated.
We are an hour into the show, and we have almost an hour's worth of questions ahead of us. So we're going to have to cut it.
Soon. A couple more questions. I'll start announcing the shutdowns.
All right. What is the status on video player support for all 3 desktop platforms? It's a big deal for us. Well, first of all, video player is a package. It's not something from the Flutter team.
It is, A video player is the first party package.
It's okay. Well, first party package. What I mean is it's not part of the framework itself.
I mean, here's the thing, right? Like, first of all, video is really, really complicated. That's what I was going to say, first of all. And then, I mean, we don't, first of all, you say, what's the status? I don't know the exact status. You can definitely go check the standard plugins repo and see what's going on with it. Also, you can go check the issue tickets, and I'm sure there's issue tickets raised for this because it's not a new thing. This has been a long-term question. I think I'd say that you need to, like, if you were to do a Windows-based application, you would go use a Windows-based media player. If you were to do a Linux media player, you go use a Linux one, and so on. And nothing stops you from doing that. So Flutter gives you the ability to put your own platform views in your apps on desktop, right? And it lets you put textures in from external apps. So you can go make something that plays the videos the way you need to play it on your application. So if it's a big deal for you, go make it, right? Like, nothing stops. Like, this is literally how you would have to do it. If you were to go make a Windows app, you would go add the Windows Media Player component or whatever into your application. You would make it work. So there's no difference there. Like, sitting around waiting for the Flutter team to do something for you, it may not be prioritized on your priority schedule. So, it's just not going to work, right? So the nice thing, though, is if you did it using the video players platform, federated platform interface, i.e. it's standard interface for video playback, it means you can just drop in place for video player. And then it means that you can, reuse all their own API, that sort of the API layout that they've done and all the rest of it, and then PR it back to the team, and all of us get to support that. So this kind of also goes out to the rest of everyone watching. If you want things and they're not there, build them. Doesn't matter if you don't know how to build them, work on building them, just helping someone else build them. These are all, it's a community, it's us all together, right?
It takes a village.
So,
It took a village to make this idiot who talks into a muted microphone. But yeah, go on Discord or Slack and ask around. Maybe there's somebody else who wants the same thing who'd be glad to team up.
Yep.
So
there's also, I will mention that, you ask about this. You can go into the official Flutter Discord, into the I think there's a frameworks plugins channel, if I remember right. Then you can go ask this exact question of them and see what they say. But also, I'll go look at the issue tickets first of all.
Yeah, it's by platform. So it's like if it's Mac OS or whatever, then one of the channels there. But also, I was going to say, since you brought that Discord up, there's a new channel for Collaborate. So you can actually go in there and say, I want to work on this. Anybody else want to work on it with me? So it's a great place for that rendezvous where it's not about money exchanging hands like a for hire or hiring channel. It's just, hey, I want to collaborate with somebody.
Okay, let's see here. What do we have next? Is Flutter getting more use internally in Google? Here's a funny thing. I'm not sure how it could, because GPay is Flutter. Okay. The ads
AdSense, AdWords
are Flutter. AdSense is Flutter. Stadia, the whole UI, Flutter. Your Google Nest Hub and Nest Home, Flutter.
I'm going to say something. As far as I'm aware, is getting used more internally in Google. There you go. That answers your question.
Yeah. And it's plus internal tools. Don't forget.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
Time for the disclaimer. Always, we do not work for Google.
Yeah,
we are just community people.
They send us cool shirts.
Yes. Oh, where'd
So,
mine go?
Sorry,
but
I will mention though quickly that this is the same as any large company. You find a technology. It doesn't matter that Flutter is the main Google is the main Flutter contributor, as it were. The point here is that any company, they start using Flutter, they're like, oh, this is quick, this was helpful, this is was did everything that we wanted to do. Okay, let's use it on the next project and the next project. And before you know it, it's being used in internal tooling, it's being used for quick little things, and it spreads, right? And this is the same in any big company that we've seen. So
And another thing too, they've been very clear for goodness, almost 5 years now, that the main things that have been driving the priorities list on what is getting worked on and what isn't, at least for a long time, was the internal needs of the company. Yeah. Because there were all kinds of internal tools being created and all kinds of internal needs. And this is what caused Flutter to be developed to the point where, about halfway through alpha, I think, maybe even into beta. And then it was external needs that started driving things. But up until sometime in 2018, it was all internal tools.
Sure.
That were driving it. And okay, we did get a be right back from Simon. Apparently something's on fire. Reminds me of the old joke. World of Warcraft, there were some people playing. They were in the middle of a raid. And suddenly someone makes the comment, G2G, cat's on fire. And they disappear. So, Gotta go, cat's on fire.
Nice.
All right. Lovely. Hey. Why is the hero tag an object instead of a string? In which context will the hero tag not be a string? Well, we always use a string in the hero tag, but I believe the hero tag object has a lot to do with triggering the actual animation, does it not? Because I mean, we've got a whole animation that's got to take place that, and it's kind of dependent on that string to tell you which two objects to animate together, like dog tags and tail. Yes, you're doing good.
Cool.
But I mean, the best thing I can think of, I don't have time really to dig into the docs right now and take a look, but there's got to be an answer in there, and I would imagine it has something to do with triggering the animation and tracking it between the two objects. Rescue dogs. All right.
Cool.
How do you get an iOS and Flutter app to open a link inside of an app instead of in a browser? I've tried everything, setting up site association, etc., but the link still opens in the browser. Sounds like a platform setting to me. But another possibility in there could be if you're using a web view, but then again, you may be running into a default browser problem, is what it sounds like to me anyway. Now, of course, Simon's going to come on and tell me I'm wrong.
Okay, sure.
Happens once in a while. So let's park this one for a minute till he gets back and double check that one. Is Flutter stable for web? It had better be. Yeah. Because the last 3 clients that I've worked on, we used it for production.
Yeah.
If you want to see a good example of it, go to Ultimate Rap League, url.tv. Or no, I'm sorry, urltv.tv.
Yeah.
And you'll see a good example of it right there. So, cool. Mike's being a wise ass. Did you make the PR to make the flex docs require our brains to flex a bit less already? If not, any time frame for it? Thanks for the compliments on the talk, Mike. I am actually, a bunch of the typing that you've heard was me talking to people at Google, trying to come to some kind of an agreement on how to word those docs. I'm afraid that if I push them the way I want, they're going to get kicked back in my face because they're going to read more like an easy reader for teens than engineering documentation. But the problem, here's the meat of the problem, all right? First of all, anytime you have a system in alpha or beta, and I've said this many times, the documentation is going to be written for engineers on that project by other engineers on that project, which means they're making assumptions that you know things that about that framework that will help the documentation make sense. But if you don't have that background, if you don't have that frame of reference, you're lost. So what was happening, and again, a caveat here, the Flutter documentation is fantastic. It wasn't always that way. A bunch of us went to I/O in early 2019, and we had this really cool party for Philip's birthday while we were there. And a bunch of us sat down, and I got to talk to some of the people who write the docs. And I explained a little problem that I had with a package. Okay, and that package was maintained by Brian Egan. Brian knows this conversation quite well. And Brian used to be the maintainer of Flutter Redux. So I looked at him, I said, Brian, buddy, when I look up your documentation on a reducer, you can't tell me it's the thing that reduces. If I knew what reducing was, I wouldn't be reading your docs. So there are a few rules with documentation, and we discussed them, a few guidelines, that is, with docs, and we discussed them, and all of a sudden they appeared to have really liked those ideas that we all talked about. And then they took off with them. And you've watched over the last, Randall, 3 years, the Flutter documentation start to include things like links to widget of the week, code examples right there that you can cut and paste.
Right.
All links to Dartpad.
Yeah, the links to actually be live
code right there.
When they work.
Yeah, and it's all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things that never got this treatment was the layout algorithm for the Flex.
Yeah.
And it's no wonder why, because if you actually read through those 6 steps, you probably want to die by the time you get to step 3. It's really complicated and it's full of jargon. Now, at the point we understand the jargon. But the people reaching for this documentation almost always are beginners who are trying to understand the behavior of row and column. Rows and columns are the fundamental layout building blocks. And yet when you go to the documentation on them to try to understand them, they're full of terms beginners have never heard of, such as flexible, flex, big F flex, small f flex, flex fit, tight, loose, all kinds of different constraints, unbounded constraints, main axis constraints, cross axis constraints. This causes a beginner who's trying to just figure out what's the basic behavior of a row and column. They go in with one question. They come out needing to research somewhere between 6 and 9 different terms they've never heard of. And it's a horrible experience that leads to a lot of frustration and headaches. So what Mike is talking about, I did a talk that kind of poked fun at a lot of this. And yes, I did warn Hixie before I did it so he wouldn't hate me forever. And I did promise Hixie that I was going to do a PR to fix this. Well, like I said, this particular algorithm is being looked up by rank beginners who are trying to understand row and column. And these are people who have been doing Flutter for less than a week. So this has to be written in a way that people who have been doing Flutter for less than a week are going to understand, right? Hence, pushing it more towards something that's like an easy reader than engineering documentation, especially considering a lot of these people are not coming from heavy software backgrounds. mean, a lot of people coming to Flutter are coming from web, right? So if they don't understand a lot of these different concepts, that's a bit tough. And let's see here. Yeah, most of the Flutter documentation is great.
Sorry about that. I had to dash that.
Is it iTunes? They're referring to a particular little thing. I make a lot of jokes about needing inhalers and oxygen when I'm doing this talk. So you got to see it. It's on Flutter Community YouTube. I'll look it up here in a moment and post a link. Simon, let's bounce back to a question that we had while you were gone, and I want to clarify, but I was saying that to me, this sounds like a platform issue with the default browser being set. So are you able to hear us now? I've been talking to you, Simon.
Wrong earbuds. He put his
testing
TV
1 2
earbuds in. Yeah, I don't know. I'm still not hearing us.
He needs to buy Pixel Buds.
No,
so it goes with the watch.
Okay.
Notice the watch band matches the Flutter shirt.
Nice.
Have I killed enough time? Do you have your sound working?
No, you're on speakers. I hopefully don't get any feedback. So apologies.
No, you should be fine. Okay, the question that's up right now.
The earbuds run out of power.
We looked at this question while you were gone, and to me, it sounds like there's a setting on the platform that is grabbing it and opening all links in the browser. What do you think?
Actually, I can tell you how to solve this. So, Henry, open the app rather than inside the browser. You've tried everything. I know exactly the problem you're having. And the problem you're having is that iOS has a hidden flag when you launch a URL that tells you to try opening up as an app link first rather than the browser. It's completely undocumented. And it's messed up.
Wait. There's something in iOS that's undocumented?
That's undocumented? That's not documented well? Yes, there is.
There's a reason my iPhone is sitting in the drawer.
I believe this was some time ago I found this issue, and I believe it got pushed to the Euro Launcher repo. So if you look at Euro Launcher, let's just take. Honestly, it's been so long. We should take a quick look right now. Why not? We're here. Let's get this bit bigger. I don't know. How does this work? No, that'd be big enough. Right. So yeah, Euro Launcher. If we go to the API reference, I believe Euro Launcher string. There you go. Passes the URL to OS that can be handled by another application. There you go. That's where you need to set the launch mode. I believe it's just standard Euro Launcher as well. So basically, you tell it to launch it, and then the mode tells it to on iOS and Android, this treats web URLs as launch in-app web view and all other URLs as launch external application. So basically, you need to choose external application to open it up. Also it's also on all platforms. On iOS, this should be used in cases where you're sharing cookies with the user browser, single file flows, or Safari does not share browser. Basically, this is what you want, if you remember rightly.
There's a follow-up.
No, there is. No, I tell a lie. External non-browser application here. This setting is used to require universal links to open.
We got a follow-up.
Not understanding my question. You don't want the app to launch the URL, but another app to launch my app.
Oh, well, they did. Sorry. Okay. Right. Well, either way, the other way around, if you need to do it, is this. There it is. It's explicitly spit out. It was added as a flag. External non-browser application that solves that problem. iOS 10 plus. Anyway, the issue you're saying is all you do is inside your you can do two things. You can register a app links domain, which essentially means that you're setting up what's called universal universal links, universal application links, something like that on iOS, and That's normally the way that works is you upload this. You have to upload a special file called app site association to your domain name, and that is how the app or how the operating system on someone's phone verifies that your app owns the domain, because the signing key has to match and things like that. Now, hold on. That's if you want the HTTP address. If you want another, so that's on clicking on a URL. You said on a URL. You didn't say on a HTTP URL, which I'm assuming is what you mean because it opens up on Safari, right? Yeah, I can tell you what you've messed up, and that is, well, first of all, your app site associations file has to be registered as like application JSON without an extension. You have to do some very weird server-side configurations to get it to output the right headers for the operating system. It has to be a 200. You cannot redirect it, so it has to return back the file directly. If you do if your server tries to return back a 301 redirect, for example, on the app association, it won't follow it, right? So there's a very particular set. Now, if you go online, you'll find app link verifiers. There's websites out there that you put in your URL or your deep link, and then it will do the checks for you and tell you what you've got wrong. So if you do one of those, that will tell you exactly what you need to change. But basically, yeah, if you don't have it exactly just right, it won't work, and it's super annoying. So,
I have two questions, one serious and one not so serious. The more serious one is what you were describing for Android, or will this also work on iOS? And the not so serious one is that if it does work on iOS, does it work better than Siri?
I'm actually gonna just, I know what the problem he's now having is. So I think, so the question I would say to you, RVB, is what you need to do is make a separate application, completely different, just do Flutter create test app or something, right? Create test application that what it does, it uses that URL launcher project and uses that external non-browser application flag to launch your deep link, right? Your URL. If it works, then it's not your problem. It means that your app associations work and the deep link works because you've got a test separate application that launches the other app. So that's why I'd verify first, because what you're probably getting into is the same case. They have not supplied this extra flag in their application, so it launches a web browser. This is because for years on iOS, Safari is always opening HTTP, right? Or the browser is always opening HTTP. You cannot do deep links with HTTP. This is the whole universal links thing with HTTP came much later, and a lot of apps don't launch them correctly. It's a known problem. The way you work around that issue, and it's also done for you if you use Firebase dynamic links, because they do a bunch of stuff, and that is you register what's called a custom schema. Normally that's so when you do it with Firebase dynamic links, it's actually your package name, so com.whatever.test app or whatever, right? Normally it's basically it has to be unique to your application. If you use Firebase dynamic links, it talks you through how you set this up, and basically you're registering a custom schema inside your it's entitlements. I think it's in your entitlements on your Xcode project, just like you do with the app links. And it means that your URL that you try and launch from the other application ends up being com.blah.testapp://testlink/ whatever, whatever you're trying to launch, right? So basically, instead of HTTP, it's your custom registered name. And that's how applications deal with this and don't launch the browser. Now, there's a trick to this, and that is the way the Firebase dynamic links works is it tries to launch, if I remember rightly, it tries to launch the, I'm going to mess this up. It's definitely documented, so go definitely read the documentation. There's one way around. Basically, it tries to launch the custom schema. If it doesn't work, it launches the HTTP schema or vice versa. I think if it launches the HTTP schema, the website returns back a bit of JavaScript that launches the custom schema. They do some weird, funky things to work around these issues. But I'd say, if you want to have a specific something set up, you'll probably be equally easier just to set up Firebase dynamic links. If your website's hosted on Firebase hosting, you can set it up on like a sub on the same domain as your website. and you can say it on like /link or something. There's ways of configuring Firebase dynamic links so it melds in with your existing infrastructure, because it deals with all that hard work, right? It deals with all that. What's this? Hang on, I'm gonna pick it. I'm using it. I'm using app links rather than Firebase dynamic links. I haven't been able to make it work on Android either, but I will try harder. I wish there was more Flutter docs. So the thing is, the reason why there's no Flutter docs in something is there's not a Flutter issue. It's a platform specific issue, right? And this is where knowledge of the direct platforms, and there are Firebase Dynamics example of a solution that is designed that you use that, you follow their guides, but it's always, I find it difficult. Every single time I have to do deep linking, it's a massive pain to set up. And there's actually companies out there that literally their job is to provide a package that does it all for you. like there's several companies out there that literally their whole purpose of being is to solve this problem because it's hard.
This is once again a good demonstration of the lines between what people think Flutter should do and not do is always so blurred. And in a way, it's kind of like the Nobel Prize in physics that was awarded recently. They jokingly say that the blame for this discovery goes to these guys. The blame for people thinking that Flutter should do all these things that it's really not supposed to do is because Flutter is so capable of doing a lot more than any other UI toolkit. But Flutter is still a UI toolkit. It's not an operating system. And there are just so many things that it's not really required to do, but especially the packages allow it to do. But yeah, remember, it's a UI toolkit. So there are a lot of things it's not supposed to do. Oh boy, what is Simon doing?
So this is what's called the Universal Guide to App Linking. It's the one place I go. This shows you what works, what doesn't work, on what type of platform, and so on and so forth, and how do they handle it all, right?
Wow.
And there's literally guides on here about what features are enabled and how you enable them. And
wow.
Yeah.
So this is a great example of why this is not a Flutter issue.
Yeah.
Right. So
it's a much bigger issue.
Now, there's also at Unilinks, which is a package on Flutter, which I use for this, which handles the receiving and sending of app link. I think it's mainly receiving of app links. I think it does sending as well. But anyway, it has guides on what you need to change in the native platforms and what you need to set up Apple Site Association, documentation links, how you make all the changes, all the rest of that kind of stuff. So I will also post that in the chat and say that is a place that I'd say you should go to. But at the end of the day it's not simple. Good luck with this, basically.
Wow.
Yeah,
okay.
See,
we have
we're an hour
18
and a
questions.
half in.
Yeah.
We still
18
have
questions and 30
left.
minutes left. Yes.
I'm also before
and
we
for,
push on to the next one.
For those who are still asking questions, please understand we kept taking questions for an hour and 15 minutes. Yeah, we got to cut it somewhere.
I want to just add to that last question. That is, Firebase Dynamic Links, as well as these other companies, do a nice, interesting thing, which is if the user doesn't have the app installed, it takes them to the Play Store, the Apple App Store, to install it. So you can imagine if someone gets shared a deep link to some content in your application, they tap on it, and if they don't have the app installed, it doesn't just say take it to the website and say, sorry, page not found, or take it to the website and says, oh, you should go install the app. No, it actually opens up the App Store straight to your app. They press the install button, and after they press the install button, it actually opens up the deep link. So it's like a transparent process of the person tapped on a link, they installed the app, and then the content gets opened. So yeah, there's a lot more you get with using some of these sort of integrated solutions. So just making you aware that it's a complex problem. It's been solved.
After that nice, very complicated answer, we have a very simple question. How many times do I keep saying this?
Yeah,
I'm telling you,
it's in there somewhere. Don't ask me how. Yeah.
And you know what? He'll sit there and tell me something, and then 5 weeks later say, well, don't you remember? No, I don't. All right. So let's move on to a much more simple question after that complicated one. FFI. FFI versus method channels. What's the difference? When to use which? I'm so sorry if you're a beginner and you're feeling lost. Don't feel bad. These topics are not for beginners.
No,
they're really not. The next one might be a little bit more so. Okay. FFI versus method channel. Well, method channel is a communication channel directly to the underlying operating system. FFI is foreign function interface. It allows you to communicate with the C++ layer. So that's the main generalized difference. Now, Simon's going to take this and
no, I was going to say you
take
said
it a lot deeper.
I want to make clear that it's any natively compiled code, so other code compiled for the CPU, basically.
True.
So that can be other languages as well, like Rust or Go or whatever they compile to native machine code, right?
Actually, on Fuchsia, that might be a thing because it is written in Rust, right?
And it's not necessarily language; it's just whatever you're trying to load is compiled, what it's compiled in. But anyway. So the point here is what's the difference and when to use which. So, it's what Scott was just saying. So basically, if you want to communicate with platform, so your operating system APIs, your platform APIs, then that's something you might use a method channel for. Or let's say a good example of this, let's just say PayPal, right? I'm just going to take PayPal and say, okay, imagine you went to pub and you typed in PayPal and there's no PayPal libraries, right? It just doesn't exist. So you go, I want to use PayPal in my app though. So you go read the PayPal documentation. It goes, oh, we have an Android SDK. Well, that's lovely. We have an iOS SDK. Even better. But I'm on Flutter. This is how this is going to work for me. So you read the Flutter docs, and I'm pretty sure we go through this all the time. And you can go. I will dig out a link in a second. But there's a whole page and a whole section on the Flutter documentation about making your own. I'm going to go find it now. Every time, but I'll go find it. As you go docs, I'm in the docs. Here you go. Look, platform integrations. There's a whole section of platform integration, writing platform specific code, Android, interop with Android, and how to do plugins. And I don't know. There's a bunch of stuff in here. Packages and plugins also has developing packages and plugins, which is another section. So the integrated platform code, writing platform specific code. This piece here talks about this, and this is how the method channels work. And generally speaking, let's say I talked about the PayPal example. They no existing pub package. So you go into your make a subdirection of project called packages or whatever, call it whatever you want. Jump in there, do Flutter create -t plugin that creates the template for a plugin. It starts the method channel stuff for you, or you can just go create it from scratch yourself. PayPal, SDK, whatever. Hit go. And in there, you open up the Android folder in Android Studio, you add the PayPal SDK. You then can export any of the features from the PayPal SDK on your implementation of your Flutter method channel in the Android section, right? Then again, on the iOS, you do the same thing. You load up the iOS project in Xcode, you add the iOS SDK, you expose the functionality. Now, that functionality exposed on what you call a method channel, which is basically a serialization channel. So you get given the method name and the parameters, and then you get to use those on the platform side, and you get to respond with a value, just like a function call. It's basically remote procedure call, but basically it sends the result back to Dart and back to your Dart code. This also works two ways. So believe it or not, the Dart code can also have functions that the native code can call. You register, just to be clear, and it's very kind of confusing. It's not very clear, I don't think. It wasn't clear in the documentation when I read it, but you do set method call handler. And when you set the method call handler, you set that in the Android for the Android code. You set that in Dart for the Dart code, and it's the other side of the channel that gets the handler called on it, right? So you're basically saying, when I receive a method call, how do I handle it? So you can actually set up two handlers, one in Dart and one in Android, and the two can cross-communicate functions between each other. Anyway, the point here is there's a whole documentation on this, and this is how you might integrate third-party library or third-party code. Now, this can be your own code, right? I give you an example. Let's say my app wants to know what version of Android I was on. I could create a function in my method channel saying, get operating system version, and I can go get that in the API call for Android and go get that for the iOS version. And then in my app, I can display them on the About screen. Now, there are packages that do this. One of them is, I think, Device Info Plus, and this was a Package Info Plus, and a few other of the Community Plus packages do this kind of stuff. But if you just needed one function, you could just go add that to your main activity, create a method channel in your main activity and expose it with a name, and then inside your Dark go use it. You don't have to create a plugin, right? But I'll just give you an example. That's the kind of what method channels are used for. Now, FFI, which answers the first part of this question, what's the difference? FFI is there to communicate to lower level code. That is raw machine code that's been compiled from other languages, right? So now this could be that an SDK has been made, for example, PayPal, that was done in C++, it's compiled to machine code, and you could just go call that with FFI. But they don't normally do that. It's compiled for the platform that you're running it on, like Windows, Linux, Mac. That's how SDKs work. So that's why we have the two mechanisms, right? You have the one for platform-specific APIs, and you have the one for the native machine code, which is more about computation normally. So you might have code in there that does things like green screen handling and, I don't know, processing of images and graphics and other sort of things. I'll give an example of like maybe a streaming solution uses custom decoders and things written in machine code that take advantage of the hardware of the device to process it in some magical way. But yeah, so that's kind of where FFI comes into it compared to method channels. I've gone on there for a long-winded thing. Hopefully that put you in the right direction. Yeah, have fun, experiment.
Next,
you're muted, Scott. But I think there's maybe we should do a session on using FFI. I think people might find it interesting.
Well, that and method channels actually is an even more common one that people could use some help with.
Maybe we should do like a little live stream and then record it on the channel so that if people ask more questions about this, we can kind of show, look, here's an example, right? Like, try this.
Yeah, cool.
Speaking of things that need examples, here's something that's near and dear, not to my heart, but to the pain in my neck. Responsiveness. It's being a real pain. They're currently using Layout Builder and Bootstrap breakpoints, right? One of the ways that we have worked with this in the past is use something called Widget Book. It just makes it easier.
Yeah.
And create all of your individual components in ways that have no sizes. Let the sizes of your components be controlled by the parent. Now, if you are using Fitted Box, you might have to give some things some sizes. That's all right. It's just basically going to kind of maintain the aspect ratio anyway as you change the parent size. But the idea is to, I guess, lift the decisions for sizes up as high as you can, is what I'm thinking. Instead of creating a button that will make adaptations, just make the darn button and it will flex with the parent. And then maybe that parent is going to change its size with something else with its parent. Sooner or later, you are going to have to make breakpoint decisions. But the fewer components you have to build that kind of adaptability into, the fewer headaches you're going to have.
There is, I mean, you're saying Bootstrap's breakpoints. So is this a web-based thing you're doing? Or is this?
I think they might be referring to VGV's Bootstrap. I believe it's probably already got some of that in there.
Oh, okay. I know. There's a material. I think there's a material breakpoints library by who's the guy from the community?
Core package. There's a core package that
Davis. No.
Yeah.
Who's the guy who went from the community and works on material now? Brody
Davis.
Yeah. Brody Davis did a breakpoints package. That's quite good and kind of helps with this kind of thing. You're saying getting overflows and text not scale. Text doesn't scale, right? Text is not designed to scale, magically scale like that. Now you could put it in a fitted box, but then you have to give it a fixed size. There are some auto text size kind of packages out there. I don't really recommend just scaling text up, because the thing is, you might get like, let's say you get like 3 items in a row, and one's got a sentence, one's got more or less a sentence, and one's got one word. The one word that suddenly appears bigger than the sentence next to it. It doesn't really work in terms of UI normally. What you probably want to do is change your font sizes based on your breakpoints. So when you're on a phone, you get smaller text maybe, and when you're on a desktop, the text gets larger to encompass the different type of layout. But you're talking about overflows. The overflows you're getting is because you've limited the size, right, of your text,
of the parent of the text.
So normally that
now one other quick point though before you move on,
dimension on
regarding
both.
text and size, never ever mess with the text scaling.
Yeah, text scale factor.
Text scale factor is not your solution here. It's a way to get your app uninstalled. Text scale factor is what the user sets when they need a larger font. As soon as you change it, you're screwing with that. Sorry, go ahead, Simon.
So many app developers, especially Flutter app developers, part of the thing of when I always launch an app is accessibility. Spend time on accessibility. That means, and it doesn't have to be do all this stuff with accessibility tree and all this kind of craziness. It just means go into your phone, set the font scale factor to the highest, set the text scale factor to the highest. What does your app look like? Does everything overflow? Does it all look like crazy? Well, then it doesn't work for people that are half blind because they have to make the text larger. So that's when you need to go change the way your layouts work. So they change better with text size changing. Now, this is where Widget Book comes in. So what Widget Book does, it actually lets you set the text scale factor, and you can see without having to go change all your phone settings and stuff, what you're literally put screen by screen. You can have 5 screens next to each other and show what it looks like on small, medium, large, and extra large font sizes, and it kind of gives you that thing. So highly recommend Widget Book as a solution for this.
Putting a link in right now, and also I don't know if people are aware of a podcast called Flying High with Flutter, and they recently did an interview. I'm not sure if they did it with Jens or Lucas or who it was from there. Let me find it here.
I'm just gonna bring this up a bit here on the screen here. So yeah, you can see here. Look, well, I hope you can see here. Maybe I make that bigger. No, it doesn't make much difference. Yeah, so over here on the right, when you see on the UI, you can choose what type of, you can choose all this yourself. What frame, if you want a frame at all, what theme, portrait landscape, localization, and text scale factor. You can add more in. And you press this little icon here. I don't know if you can see this, and that shows you lots of them side by side, and then you can kind of zoom out and choose whatever widgets you register. It's very handy for when you're building a UI section of widgets, or just trying to solve this problem of multi-dimensional widgets. In other words, you've got not just to think about just the size of the widget and the one use case for the widget, but all the possible use cases for the widget. And that's responsiveness, right? Most people think responsive is just about size, right? It's not just size. There's almost like a depth factor of that text scale factor to it as well. There's also not just text scale factor, there's also UI scale factors in Android as well. I don't know if iOS has that. So
and the episode for Flying High. Sorry,
go on. If you got the link,
The episode for Flying High with Flutter is number 85. It was on November 16th.
Cool.
Is when they're talking with Lucas and Jens both. They are really fun guys to wander around Oslo with. Trust us on that.
We had some good ice cream actually.
All right.
Nice.
Next, AAA.
I had responded to this about an hour ago. It's really out of our scope.
Any favorite JavaScript framework / library? Just curious.
Was jQuery, not doing JavaScript anymore.
Oh my God, jQuery is so old.
Yeah.
To be honest, I don't. I was going to say Dart's JavaScript output.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If we ever get a new JavaScript project, it's going to be Dart.js. It's going that's guaranteed. Yes.
I'll share something now. Why not? Since someone asked this question, I came across this technology recently, HTMX. The website's htmx.org, which sounds quite cool. Basically, you add their thing, and then, for example, here, maybe I should make that larger. The example here.
It's not another X product, is it?
No. This is I think the best way I could say what this is that it's like the DHTML of old. Random might know what I'm talking about when I say that.
Oh, God,
no.
no.
But basically, the idea here is that here, when you tap on this button, it will post a post call to /clicked via Ajax, and then take the output and pop the out of HTML. That means this entire button and its content with whatever it gets back. Right? There's common. I know we say that, but there's common use cases of websites like click to edit, click to load, delete row, edit row. These are all like lazy load content. These are all standard patterns that you get. And the idea is the library makes it easy for you to do that by just chucking stuff in like this, and then you get like a click to edit, and it magically turns into
15 minutes and 15.
Yeah, we got 15
questions.
minutes and 14.
Moving on.
Okay. All right. Why dark? Okay.
Whoa,
guys, what are you doing?
That's the next one.
Stop.
One
driving.
driver.
All right. This Ali, I'm sorry, but this question is just not answerable as is. In short, what I'm seeing is why is a class losing some data when you apply logic and add process data to a different class and lose data during init?
Okay, I would say that there's state management problems inside your application for a start.
Yeah, state management. App state. App state's
and
not
you're
app
talking
state
about
yet.
like dark classes don't magically lose any data. This is because you're replacing the class instance. So I can tell you right now, what you want to do is use print the object out, and inside your toString method, output the hash code of the object. That's .hash code. If they are different, it's not losing data. You have two different objects, which is probably
and if you are creating this object in the build method, it's creating a new instance every single time you rebuild. So if you're applying logic and rebuilding that particular widget or that particular screen, that answers it right there.
You need to use stateful widget and put any state that you want to maintain in the state object itself, not in the widget. A lot of people do this mistake. Widgets are immutable. Widgets do not, the widget class itself, right? That's like anything that extends widget, stateful widget, stateless widget, anything like that, it's immutable. Don't put any state in there that changes. Every variable in there should be final, right? That's it. You cannot change it. Once it's been set in the constructor, that's it. It's final. It does not change. If you break that one rule, you will get magically losing data. And why does this change? And things magically happen. Because
and if you put it in the build method too. But my old joke, there is no such thing as a stateful widget. There really isn't. Stateful widgets do not change their state. They have a state object that changes state. Big difference. So moving on. This is a two-parter, and I can tell you right now, I'm pretty sure that we don't have an answer for the second part. Firebase messaging deliberately checks for a dummy field in order to omit push notifications coming from third parties. This only happens on iOS. Well, there's part of your problem. When the app is in the background, we want to use Firebase plus one signal. And what do you think of the Flutter team's stance on this decision? It doesn't help us devs. The Flutter team's stance on the decision,
we don't know.
They don't discuss this stuff with us.
I mean, I will honestly just go read the issue tickets, because their stance, if someone's complained about this, it's an issue ticket and they've replied in the issue ticket. It's there in the public, right? So that's what I'd say about that. Also, I think I know what you're talking about, but it's because Firebase messaging is a product. It doesn't mean you can't use, you don't have to use the Firebase messaging client library. Push notifications come into the device on the platform level. They're literally nothing to do with Firebase, right? So when a push notification gets sent out, it can be sent through Firebase, essentially through Google's Firebase messaging service for Google stuff, and Apple's push network, APNs, right? There's no third-party APNs, by the way. It doesn't matter what you say. to send to an Apple device, it has to go through the Apple network, and to send to a Google device, it has to go through the Google network. Full stop. That's how it works, right? It's complicated under the hood and how push works on the network level, but that's how it has to work. So any third party, like OneSignal, has to actually well, this is not I please put the ticket in the chat so we know, right? And everyone can be available. Anyway, the point here is OneSignal. You can definitely use OneSignal on Flutter with Flutter, and you can use Firebase messaging to send out notifications. It'll go out to Android and thing, and it will get delivered to your devices. And if you're trying to use particularly an implementation, then the problem is with the implementation. Don't use the implementation. Just make your own plugin, right? Like as we just said, you can just use create plugin. Or just add it to your application, Android and iOS folders, make a method channel in there that when it receives a push notification, it sends it to the dark code. It is just a few lines. I mean, like, and the whole point, here's the kind of thing. When you look at this Firebase messaging library or other things like this, they always seem very complicated. And that's because they have to service a wide array of audience, right? They're trying to make it very generic in their approach so that it can work for everyone, right? And when it fails, like in your use case, then everyone complains. It's not generic enough, right? Now, the thing is, if you implement it yourself, you're implementing your unique use case, which means you don't have to implement it like Firebase messaging. It doesn't have to be generic. You just go, when it receives a push, I get this function called exactly with the data that I wanted from the push notification, you're done. Right? You don't have to make it all generic and support all these different use cases and all the rest of it, right? So I'm just trying to get at, like, people talk about it like, oh, I can't do that because I'm recreating Firebase messaging or, recreating this large library. And the answer is no, you're not, because you're not making it generic. It's not there to support the entire audience of Google, right? You're making it to support your particular use cases.
Yeah. So before moving on to the next one, I have spent a lot of money on mind reading courses, and it's good to see that they're actually working.
Yeah. Good.
You guys are answering my question I have to ask. This is nice.
Yeah.
I would like to know what question it was, though.
No, we have too many already. We have 7 minutes and 11 questions. 7-Eleven is a store chain.
Next, what's the top one?
I'm doing the top
I want to know what this one is.
Wait your turn. In my app, the first click on hot restart does a hot reload. The second click on hot restart does a real hot restart. First question, which platform? Because web acts very wonky.
Wait. First click of hot restart does a hot reload. And the second click on hot restart does a real hot restart. I think I've never seen that before. What I have seen is on web, it only does hot restart because it only supports hot restart, right? I've never seen that behavior in any one of, maybe, are you in VS Code? Maybe it's a VS Code particular issue. Maybe you should try it, or vice versa. If it's an intelligent problem, try VS Code to see if it's in the client libraries, or even better.
Also, are you sure this is what's happening? And one way to do that actually is do a small animation, like just do an animated icon, right? Start up your app, animate it, then do your hot restart. If that icon does not change state back to the original, then it did a hot reload, because hot reload does not reset animations back to the beginning.
Yeah,
and I'm pretty sure an animated icon would not reset. You
can also do this if you override reassemble on any state widget, that will get called on a hot reload, right? And one thing to also mention is that what happens a lot of the time, and people don't realize this, is they do a hot reload and it has a restart kind of effect, because this is where they put their state in the wrong place and state gets wiped. So the application kind of thinks they started over again somewhere in your logic and will rebuild, and then you kind of get a starting, like a fresh start of the application.
But they're having the opposite problem. Just double checking that. But you're right. A lot of people do have that problem.
The first click of hot restart does a hot reload, and the second click, there's so many reasons. Like the behavior just doesn't change like that. I would say test it in both IDEs, but also run Flutter Run. If you run Flutter Run on command line, you press R or capital R, does hot restart or hot reload. and if it does what you expect, or if it does, first of all, if that does exactly the same thing that you're seeing, there's a problem in your app. Huh?
The R's are reversed. That's all.
Whatever.
They'll figure it
out. Whatever way around it. The other thing to
Right.
mention here is, why don't you do this, Gerbs? Why don't you create a test application? Flutter create, app test, whatever. Run that and see if it does it on the test app. Because if it does it on the test app, then you've just learned that it's a problem in your app specifically.
Actually, the counter app would do that. Just advance the counter a bit and then try a hot restart. Because if it only reloads, then it's not going to reset the value on the counter.
Yeah. Right.
All right, moving on. What can be next for Flutter Web in 2023? When you find out, you tell us.
Right.
What can be? No, he said what can be new. What can be new, as we know, the work
are things that aren't there yet.
No. The point here is
new if it's not there.
What would you wish for Flutter Web in 2023? This is how.
I have one. I wish people would realize that Flutter's for web apps and not websites, so they'd stop asking about SEO in Flutter.
Yeah, that's a good one.
That's my big ask.
I would say I'd say that I like to see WASM, Dark WASM come to fruition.
Yeah,
and seeing what impact that's going to have.
That's in the works.
Flutter for Web.
10 questions, 5 minutes. Let's go.
Yep. Here's where I make kind of a wisecrack. Build runners taking 30 to 45 minutes on an M2 Pro. The project's using GraphQL code gen for generating JSON models. And the first thing I want to say about this is even a Mac's not that slow. Something's got to be wrong.
It could no. So I will mention that you can do. Here's the thing, right? Like, how often are you running this? Also, that does seem a very long time. You can actually run. So once you run build runner once, go look in your .dart_tool folder in your project, and you'll find there's a build runner Dart file, like a main program. You can just run it with Dart, and it will do what build runner does, because the first step of build runner is actually building those the temporary files. Now, what you can actually do is open up that file in debug mode and step through it if you want to inside your IDE. And you can actually see why build runner is actually taking that long. You can see what is taking all that time. So, and you can even better, you can actually pause it at any point, go profile it, or look at the profile, look at the Dart dev tools and see what's using up all the memory, all the, so on. Debug it yourself. However, if your project is only doing, you can normally see in the logs what it's doing during build runner. And if it's generating GraphQL and it's taking that long to generate all the GraphQL stuff, well, GraphQL code gen is just really bloody slow. So don't use that. Make your own, or don't use the code. There's tons of ways around this. I mean, if it's taking that long, and the question you had is it common? The answer is no, it's not common. However, I don't use GraphQL code gen, so I couldn't mention if it is going to take that long on that particular package. There are future things coming. The analyzer has new ways of building code. I'm sorry, I'm just going to bring something up here because this kind of pivots onto something I do want to mention briefly. I know we have a limited time. Data class plugin made by some people I know. This actually uses the new experimental data analysis server generation of code on the fly. And this is where we're kind of moving to. This is the kind of, you can just read this, but basically you just add data class and magically you can do generate code. It generates a bunch of code in the Dart project for you. So it's very much like a slightly different approach to how you do code generation. The model that we're seeing, static meta programming, is going to kind of solve a lot of the code gen problems we're having at the moment, and because it brings it in line. We had this actually. If you go back into this channel, you'll find that we did some talks with Kevin Moore. Quite a few months ago now, maybe 3 months ago.
More.
Was it more? And we did a couple of talks about this, and
which Kevin Moore too.
Kevin Moore. That's what I said. Kevin Moore.
There are two.
Which
of them.
Kevin Moore?
Dark Kevin Moore.
Kevin Moore from the Flutter Apprentice book, or Kevin Moore from Google?
I just said from Dart team.
Okay.
Right. So the point here is that he talks about the static metaprogramming a little bit more, and there's stuff on the Dartlang language repo, but the whole idea is that CodeGen, every single time the code builder has to run, it has to regather the entire state and reprocess a bunch of things multiple times, and it wasn't really designed for how it's being used right now. So the future is that won't be a problem anymore with the rewrites that they're doing to introduce new mechanisms of code generation, and hopefully this won't be a long-term problem. However, it shouldn't take 30 to 45 minutes. I'd say they've got some particular issues in the way that they're processing that code.
Okay, and also, would it be bad to say that when we're talking about Kevin Moore, we need more clarification?
Oh, only if we get Mary Tyler Moore and Roger Moore in here.
Oh, God. All right. Is there a standard way of serializing, deserializing a Flutter widget tree?
No.
Daryl, I've never heard of doing it at all, let alone
there is a package that does it.
Why?
There is reason to do it. So there's I'm going to go find it. I have it.
Okay.
I'm going to go quickly find it.
Okay, while you're doing that, I want to jump to another one that's quick, and we'll bounce back. Junior jobs are very rare, and disappointed to put first step as a professional developer. First, the one thing that you want to do, let me find it real quick. You want to double check your skills trees, your skill set, against a particular, there we go, the roadmap.
You should have that on
the Flutter roadmap by Alexei. Alexei is a Flutter GDE that is Alexei Lushenko. Alexei Lushenko married Anna Domash.
I'm wondering how many Amazon Alexas have just been triggered by you saying that. Go on.
Really? But that right there, you want to go through about the first half of it before you're employable. Maybe the first third. There are jobs out there. The biggest problem that I've seen is that the people writing the job descriptions don't know what they're doing. And I actually had somebody contact me on the phone yesterday asking if I was interested in a position, and they said they were going to email me even after I told them no. So they emailed me, and I look at this thing, and it says they want 8 to 10 years experience for a Flutter job.
Wow.
And so I emailed them back, and I said, I'm still not interested in it, but you should know that anybody who reads this not only won't be interested, they'll be laughing at you.
Yeah.
Because people have no idea what the heck they're, that tells you if they want 8 years Flutter experience. Flutter's only been, the first commit to the Flutter repo is Flutter was 5 years ago. Right. Thereabouts, August of 2017. Yeah. So don't tell me that you want 8 years experience on a system that hasn't even existed for 8 years.
Right.
But that roadmap right there is an excellent way to handle that. Okay, back to this one.
So here's a package no one's ever heard of.
Wow.
It's also an experimental package that is completely unsupported. So just beware. RFW, remote Flutter widgets made by Hixie. And it's an experimental package.
There's somebody who doesn't know what he's doing.
And it's an experimental package in terms of being able to do essentially the kind of remote rendering. So you can take a string of Flutter UI code and actually render it out and send it across the wire and have a remote widget inflate it essentially.
Wow.
So it's really cool. It's really interesting. However, it's literally an experimental. I'll pop it in the chat if you're interested. The thing, Daryl, is I want to know why you want to do this and for what purpose. So a lot of the time when I needed to do dynamic UI, it's never been down to the level of what the widget tree provides, right? It's never been down to, I want a complete new, every detail of the widget. Normally it's to component level. I want to change the layout of some components or, groupings of things or something like that, which is normally done with sort of a meta description. So they're just like something like a little bit of JSON that says lay out these objects in this order with this data, right? Like it's not like that can be fetched from a remote server and you can update the layout of the screen remotely then, right? You don't normally need to serialize and deserialize an entire tree. If you're talking about remote rendering or server-side rendering, there a lot of the time that kind of ends up being from at least from recently and from applications that I've seen or been explained to me is that they literally stream down a video to the user and they take the feedback of clicking on things and send it to the server. So everything's rendered server side on the GPU on the server side. And in that situation, you don't send any widgets. You're sending a video and clicks back and forth, and there's no client side at all, right? It's all server side. At least that keeps their proprietary technology out of the hands of the user, and completely increases the bandwidth costs of running the service, the servers, right, and all the users. So not a good idea in my opinion, but MIHO, right? My humble opinion.
Okay.
Right,
OAuth and Dart is such a pain. So many platform checks. No one package to rule them all. Okay. Firebase desktop support for OAuth. Okay, so
there is support for that right now in the Firebase UI package. There you go.
We have been digging around the auth UI packages at work all week. So funny you should ask this particular question.
I'll pop the link in the chat here. So there's this package called Firebase auth. No, wait a minute, that's the old one. Is it the old one?
2 years ago.
Yeah, that's not the new one. Hang on a minute. Firebase UI auth. That's
the one. Yeah, of course. Of course. That makes it clearer.
That makes it clearer. Yeah. Anyway, so this is a new one. Desktop supported for like Google sign-in, Twitter sign-in, supports the OAuth views. There's actually UI OAuth, which is the underlying package which supports like the main ones. And then there's actually another library that implements the specific OAuth for each one. Yep, that's it. It links to Google. So that's the Google one. And then you've got an Apple one, Facebook one, Twitter one. Now, obviously, that's limited. It's not like generic OAuth, but why is OAuth? Yeah, so again, it's mainly around like how you want to handle it. But the most cases are you can just use your old launcher with launch web view, and then it will launch a web view to do the authentication on the client's platform, and then you get the redirect URI, and that redirect UI can actually run some JavaScript that works outside of the web view, returns back the data that it needs, the code that it needs from the URL, and then you can shut down the web view. It's not too difficult. I don't know, like I do see what you're saying, but that would also, yeah, I mean, it sounds to me like you're using Firebase and you want desktop support, and you're trying to use OAuth with Firebase. So I'd say use that package. Hopefully that helps. It's being actively worked on, and they obviously want multi-platform support for these things.
Okay,
go on.
Looks like we have all the questions from here on are nowhere near beginner friendly. So if you're a beginner hoping for more beginners questions, I'm sorry, you're out of luck.
Too bad.
Just a heads up.
Everyone can get something of interest from every question. Even like
there is.
I will say maybe we say something that's completely brand new to you.
Yeah.
Sorry, and you go off and investigate it. So anyway.
Okay. Using GetIt, Thomas's package for injection in a triple D architecture started with Riso. The file is huge. Should we be doing this a different way for a larger app?
My file is huge. I'm using GetIt for injection DDD architecture. I mean, I'm kind of curious what huge is, right? Because huge is relative. It may be huge for you, but in terms of, look at the Google font package, which has a single Dart file that's like 5 megabytes. It's not that huge.
You have to scroll twice to get to the bottom of the page.
If you're generating GetIt injection code, right?
Many
You
singletons.
say you have many singletons. Maybe that's not the right approach, right?
Yeah,
So
400 singletons.
Is that really many singletons?
Oh my
400.
goodness me! I think you've gone DDD crazy, my friend.
Oh man,
this is actually so. This is something that I want to talk about briefly. You can get back to the question here, right? Is that about 400 lines or 400 singletons? Because I was going to say there's a difference.
400 singletons, I think.
Right.
That's a whole lot of injection. That's injection coming at you.
The RESO Coda DDD architecture is like people talk about all these different patterns, right? And this is my humble opinion, and I'd like to hear what the other two here have to say about this. But you talk about test-driven development. Totally test-driven development is you write your tests before I run a line of code.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
This I cannot.
That's the purest way. Yeah.
That's the purest way. But this is what I'm trying to say. If you're 100% TDD, that is your approach. And the same goes for DDD. If you're 100% DDD, you must have all your use cases. You must have this. You must have that. You must break it all down and stuff. And so you can still have domain separation. You can still do these things, but without being like completely crazy on your structure. Now, sorry, I don't know your name, so I'm going to say Flutter Code. If Flutter Code, you have like a file which is use case, that's like 3 lines that just wraps an API call from here to here. You've got to think, why am I doing this? Like, if there's no other implementations of this abstraction, right? Why am I doing this? That means you've gone DDD crazy because you've implemented a pattern, added lots and lots of overhead to your code, and for no discernible benefit, right? Now, there are benefits that you get from the DD modeling, like RESO Coda talks about this, and these are all valid arguments, like testing and separation of concerns, but you don't need to go absolutely crazy on it. That's what I'd say.
No, definitely not.
And is that the same? How about you, Randall?
Yeah, I would say one of the things that I did early on that was sort of making mistakes, I went, oh yeah, I'm going to use Riverpod to inject a mock for this particular class. So I wrote an abstract class interface, and then I wrote the implementation for live, and then I had to parallel that with the implementation for mocking. But I went, wait a second, why do I need an abstract class? The base class I can implement that with my mock. And so I don't have to have 3 classes. I only need 2. And I think once you start figuring that out, that yes, you can do it absolutely purist way, or you can do it a practical way, which you write your main line and then you implement from that to get your mock.
There's this other thing, like these patterns sometimes come from other languages.
Yeah,
when they come from other languages, they make sense in their other language, right? Like a lot of patterns come from the Java world, and it's where Java had a limited structure at the time when those were invented. So these patterns help get around some of those limitations, but it meant you approached the pattern and building of it in a certain way, which doesn't make sense in Dart, right? So I don't know.
That's similar to.
I wouldn't say this necessarily about DDD. However, the point I'm trying to make here is that as Randall was just saying, something that most people don't realize is any class can be implemented. So most other languages, you have to explicitly define an interface. You say this thing is an interface that has these methods and these getters or whatever else, and then any class can implement that. The way it works in Dart is any class can just be implemented, meaning that you can use any class as an abstract class. You don't have to explicitly declare an abstract class with your interface. And this just means that you don't get doubled up code now. You just have, here's your interface. And if you change your main code, the test case breaks because it implements the interface, right? Automatically, you have to go implement that method for your code to run. Like it's
awesome.
It's brilliant. It just does what you expect it to do. So anyway, the point I was going to make is, yes, I get what you're saying with your GetIt and injection, and it's generating lots of code. There's a point at which is the injection, is this doing you any favors? You need to go look into how it's building the injection and saying, where can I cut down on this, right? Because you could probably have one object that contains a bunch of other objects that you're passing around, and you just pass around that conglomeration of objects rather than each of the individual things that you're injecting, right? So that can cut down on that code generation because you're passing one object that contains multiple references. rather than each individual reference. There's some things like that you can do to kind of narrow down your injection. Again, without this particular use case, it's very hard to understand. But yeah, I do agree with you. Like there's also, I would also say that you don't have to have one global GetIt injector. Well, you don't have to one. Okay, I'm going to be clear. You don't have to one global GetIt instance. I don't know about the injection library and how it generates the code. If you can have multiple injection instances, I think you can because you have to annotate it. But go check. But my point here is that what you could do is have one small group of one GetIt instance for your backend, one GetIt instance for your front end, and then you can link those up, right? So you can actually say, oh, go get the backend instance from this other GetIt instance, as it were. Go get this other class from this. Anyway, the point here is that you can actually separate that up. So you can break it down so it's not so huge and unmanageable from a debugging perspective. But normally this happens
another
with
point there,
code.
though.
Like it can get out of control and unwieldy, and you have to deal with it, right? Or do it by hand and make it yourself, right? And therefore you can just edit out all this problem.
5 more questions, negative 15 minutes.
One more thing I'm trying to get my one little bit in here on that last question.
Go.
Matt's no dummy. Okay. Researcoder, he knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
Reach out to him on Twitter or something and ask him, hey, this technique that you're doing, how does it scale? And if you were to start scaling up to something bigger, would you change something? Because he might just turn around and say, well, yeah.
I mean, the thing
again,
is,
he knows what he's doing. Oh, go ahead.
I will mention specifically about DDD, right? Like you're it sounds to me like you're using code injection on all of your component, on all of your use cases and everything, right? Inside the DDD the model. And what you probably want to do is do some of that manually, like do the each of your domains yourself, and then just put all the domain level things inside the injector, things like that. Like you don't have to just check everything inside the injector. Like if you go look at the DDD that Risa did, he probably didn't use GetIt. I think he just did it all by himself, right? Like there's no need to use any injection at all. Maybe. So yeah, you can choose what level you're going at and joining those two things together. Okay. Let's move on.
2 hours and 17 minutes in and 4 questions left to go. We haven't done a 3-hour show in a long time, and I don't want to do one today.
No, I can't do it either. So let's wrap it up quick there.
I've been playing around with OpenAI. Really impressed. Cool. You got to tell me about it. I know nothing. Even got it to generate some Flutter code. Any thoughts on how developers? Okay. Any thoughts on how developers can stay up with the tech curve? Absolutely. First of all, you can rewind this stream about an hour and 10 minutes to find where we were talking about how you can stay up to date on the different changes and what's going on. So that's the first thing you can do to stay up with the tech curve is rewind your stream. Anybody else?
I'm having fun watching Copilot add stuff to my code that sometimes is spot on, amazingly cool, and most of the time it's random crap. Next thing I type is fine. You know,
there's a new thing because the prompts that you give AI is there's a whole like not subculture, but there's a whole set of people that are working with AI, and their skill set is generating these prompts to get AI to do what they want it to do, right?
Yeah.
Now, this is the same as Google searching, right? That you have to learn how to structure your Google search to get the best results, right?
Right.
And I think that this is going to actually also be a thing where like we have to learn how to correctly like persuade the computer, as it were, correctly create these prompts to get the AI to do what you want. I've seen people make these prompts like a little comment in their code with a prompt, and it generates this amazing code with Copilot. But it's the other times, you know, you can put the crazy prompt in and you just get crap out, right? So, you know,
Copilot's also looking at comments, so you can actually put a comment in. That's the code you want to write, and it adds the code for your comment.
That's what I mean. That's your prompt.
Is weird.
That's what they call a prompt in the AI scene. And
exactly.
it's kind of really interesting.
It's very weird. Anyway, we got to move.
But you said staying up. Yeah, there's no magic to staying up. Just keep your eyes and ears open, and
we covered that.
Well, and devote at least 20% of your day to cruising like Reddit, and make Twitter lists that you will know are only actual relevant Flutter stuff instead of dog posts and other things that I tend to post. But yeah, you just got to invest time in it, really.
Yeah.
Yep.
How would you send that batch of analytics on the app start?
Which I spoke earlier about.
I don't know which one you're talking about by that, but
no, I know exactly what. So when I mentioned about how analytics batch up to save data, how would you send that? The answer is in your init state. There's when your in main widget init state starts, you create a future and send it. Right now. There's app start and there's app resume, and these are two separate things. App resume is actually there's a in the API. I forget what it's called.
Now you're talking about like the Android lifecycle on stop on resume.
App state lifecycle. What's it? App lifecycle state. That's the one.
State.
Did app life? Yeah, widgets binding observer. So widgets binding observer. If I can load it, hang on. Widgets binding observer. This class lets you add and remove an observer. In fact, this example here is one. You basically extend. Where is it? Yeah, extend your state with widgets binding observer, and then in your init state you add an observer, and then in your dispose you remove the observer, and then when you get the lifecycle change. The app lifecycle change will give you like this, resumed. And if you get resumed, it means it came from the background. So this did change lifecycle. It's a really helpful thing to say. It explains it here why these are, but your app is now visible and responding to user input. So this is great because it covers a case where the person didn't stop the app, they put it in the background, and then they left it maybe for a day. The app wasn't shut down, so you're not starting again. And then the app opens up the app and it brings it back to the foreground. And when that happens, you get resumed, and that's what that can really help. So that at that point, you want to send your analytics as well. Yeah.
One of the things I saw just real quickly as an aside on that for app lifecycle, I saw a posting on this somewhere where I'll see if I can find it in chat where it watches for when your app goes away. And if you're on the password screen or something with key data that you want to hide, it hides it right then because that's then the screen that's snapshotted for your navigator. Really cool. So that it keeps bad things from being on that navigator panel of windows.
Yeah, there's actually
nice stuff.
There's some other interesting things you can do. I think there's a couple of packages out there that stop like screenshots and things. So if your app goes into the background, it blanks the app out, stuff like that. So
cool. All right.
Fun time.
Okay.
Right,
next.
Moving on. Am I correct in assuming that if I'm building my app correctly using Riverpod, I should never need to use something like GetIt, and you should always have access to ref? Pretty much. I mean, GetIt's a service locator. I'm not sure. Right. Does Thomas offer anything with it that Remy doesn't offer with Riverpod?
I don't think GetIt has anything that Riverpod can't do. Riverpod is low-level Legos, so it's probably going to be able to build anything that's done in GetIt.
I think that it's that I should always have access to the ref, and the answer is, in theory, yes. It can. I find it difficult, to be honest, and I still haven't got my head. I don't use Riverpod on a day-to-day basis, so don't ask me. I'm not the expert. However,
Now, on that note, though, please know that Simon writes his own state management.
But the point here is that you're meant to always be able to get to the references and to get to the providers that way and manage your state. So that Riverpod itself is not linked to Flutter. There's Flutter Riverpod, which is the linkage to Flutter, right? But it's Dart, so you can use it in non-Flutter projects as well.
Right, that's cool.
And if you run into any real problems with it, Two things.
Ask me.
You can post it to SO because Remy is super active on Stack Overflow.
Yep.
He answers all kind of questions about Riverpod.
Tag
he wrote the
Riverpod.
thing.
Yeah.
And the other thing is when you post a question about any state management thing, if someone just comes back and says, well, use GetIt instead, take a look. The account probably has existed for 1 day. So you can ignore those. Long story. Don't ask. Moving on.
There's a Riverpod Discord too. Don't forget the Riverpod Discord.
Yes,
That's another
Riverpod
great place
Discord.
for Riverpod questions. Because Remy hangs out there and answers. He answered some of my questions earlier while I was on the call here.
I don't know. I think is there 100 Discord server limit per client? Because I think I'm hitting it.
I think I'm going to get close. It's getting there already. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Should Flutter support dependency injection out of the box similar to Angular TS? What's your take? Thanks for saying we're awesome. My take, really, if you were to look at the definition of a UI toolkit, when you think about it, what should be in something that is just a UI toolkit? Things you can see, things you can touch, stuff that makes that stuff move, like in a scrolling list, things you can hear. Pretty much. Now, what does Flutter do? All kinds of other stuff that's above and beyond. So should it support dependency injection out of the box? Not necessarily, especially when we got all these packages and such, but it's also not that hard to do.
Right.
I will say that GetIt is a wonderful injection mechanism. It doesn't rely on Flutter. Boom, you got it. You just add a package and it's there. I don't know why.
GetIt.
It. By Thomas Burkhart, who's a wonderful member of the community. Dependency injection out of the box. The thing is, you say dependency out of the box, and that's similar to Angular TS, right? And I look at that and go, that's because of the way web works. I feel like it's just a different. I feel like it's just a different scoping of problem. The thing is, to be honest, adding a dependency is simple as get it from one place and hand it to the next thing, right? That requires it. That is dependency injection. You just hand it in the constructor. That you've given it its dependency. You cannot start that.
Yeah, that's every constructor in Flutter.
Yeah, you can't construct that object without having this other object done, right? That's and so it does support dependency injection. Like what you're talking about is more like what are these other ones? Like there's a bunch of come on, what's that? My brain just dropped from there's a very common one that's used on Android, at least Android apps. Anyway, but which is basically the idea that you register, you use annotations, and it does code generation, and it, does that for you. And that's what the injector package does for GetIt. It generates the GetIt code to link all of the constructors up so that it automatically passes the objects around. And to be honest,
are you thinking of the one-size-fits-all Android package called Butterknife?
No, but Butterknife, it's gonna bug the hell out of me, and so I'm sure someone's probably gonna chuck it in the chat once it comes through. Anyway,
save it for next show.
Yeah, for next week, right?
Yep. We will be back.
Yeah,
I'm going to say injection. This
Dagger. Somebody's suggesting Dagger. I think
Dagger. That's it. Thank you.
Yeah,
Dagger 2. Yeah.
Good. Yes.
And
thank
like
you, chat room.
There are actually packages on Pub that do that out of the box. Why would I want this out of the box? Like, here's the thing: not every project is going to need it. Not everyone was going to want to use it. Therefore, it's not required for the framework to work. Therefore, it's not included.
And that goes back to keeping the Flutter framework fairly generic, so that everything applies to most use cases. And if you need anything special, that's what are we up to now on pub.dev? How many tens of thousands of packages?
It's got maybe.
Are we pushing 100,000 yet?
Maybe. The thing here I'd say here is that as much people say I want this in the framework, I want it just to be there, and the answer is is there with one additional line to your pub spec, right?
Right.
You don't want these things in the you say you want them in the Flutter framework, but you also don't want them in the Flutter framework because you want the Flutter framework to be lean. You want the team to be able to manage it in a performant way, in a quick way, get them out to new platforms, manage all these changes on all these new platforms. It's the more they keep out of the main code base, the better it is for everyone, right?
It also means it can be on a different publish schedule too. You don't have to wait for a Flutter release, a major release, to bring something new, and you can just update a package, which is why package collection and package async are there. They're to have a different life cycle than the main core.
Right. And also remember that they have to maintain every single thing that they put in this framework.
Yeah.
And so unless it's absolutely necessary for most use cases, it's better off as a package and somebody else do the maintenance, because the Flutter team does not have nearly as many people as you think it does.
Anyway, last question.
We at least get nice t-shirts from these people, so we actually see them once in a while, like once a year.
Right.
Last question.
That's
Push
it.
the button. No, it says
we're
one
done.
still. It says one.
Okay.
What do you mean one?
Still,
I don't have a one.
It says starred one to me.
Yeah,
Right,
it says one for me.
I got none.
Sure.
It's the one I keep bringing up, and you say is not there.
I gave him instructions about how to.
We already went into this.
Well, you didn't take it off the list. Okay, there you go. So
yeah,
all right.
There's because GDG and also Nilay, I had sent a message back about contact Nilay on Twitter.
Okay.
So
all righty, let's call it a week and see you all next week, guys.
Yeah, see you next week.
This week.
Yeah,
I see more of you. I hope. Tell your friends. Tell your friends.
Tell your relatives.
Tell your enemies.
Right.
Yes.
Tell anybody. Just get everybody to mash that like button and subscribe.
Tell the React Native people to come on over.
And also,
too.
Another note. People are asking about the Flutter community Mastodon. Short version. If we open that thing up to the public right now, the bill is going to kill us.
Yeah.
So we need to figure a way to scale this that's controlled so the funding is still there without me having to take out another mortgage on this house.
I would say what we've seen other communities do at the moment to manage the Mastodon at scale is that they have like a Patreon kind of thing. You just pay a token $1 and that just gets you an account and you can use it for a lifetime. And it just helps run things. It's without an underscore now. I removed the underscore.
What did you do to me?
It's Flutter community without the underscore now, because
I should never have made you an admin on that account.
Too late. All
right.
Anyway,
there.
Please support us, and it will go towards supporting the thing. And anyone that does go and sign up for the Patreon at any tier, I'll send you an invite to the Mastodon server right now. So,
yeah. And there's something on there about a live feed with Simon and I, and we keep trying to make that happen. I really should take that off so we don't overpromise. Because right now, when I tell the lady of the house I'm going to be on time for dinner, that apparently is overpromising.
Right.
Hi, Sarah.
Bye. Bye, Ron.
Hey, Sarah.
Bye, Sarah.
Goodbye. Goodbye. you.